normally a suit and a tie, like my boss, the High Commissioner, did just last week. But I have nothing like that in my suitcase, actually, because I'm working in the refugee camp normally, and normally you don't wear a suit there. The second thing is why it's so dark, because we have a power outage. I tried to switch on the light. There's no light, unfortunately, and I just hope that my phone will survive with the battery here. And number three, the internet in Ethiopia, it's terrible. Not because it's Africa, because Africa actually, even in South Sudan, you have pretty nice internet meanwhile. But here in Ethiopia, you have only one state-run company who's doing the internet, and it's not very good. So if you can't understand me, if I'm breaking up sometimes, please forgive. It's, I can't change it, actually. I'm sorry. If so, I would, trust me. So thank you very much for the introduction. My name is Chris Melzer. I'm working indeed for UNHCR, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, and we are the birthday boy or girl or whatever you like, because we were founded 70 years ago in December. We just had our birthday. And at that time, in 1950, December 1950, when we were founded, the United Nations thought, okay, we have worldwide a lot of refugees. Let's have some high commissioner and let's give it a mandate for 3 years with the option to extend that for another 3 years. And then after 6 years, the problem will be done. Well, the problem at that time was that maybe the refugee situation in Europe was done, but not worldwide. But in the early 50s, the world meant for the United Nations actually Europe and North America. Africa, come on, little colonies. And Latin America, not that important. That was the picture of the world of many of the Western diplomats at that time. But there were, of course, a lot of things that were going on in the world, like the decolonization in Africa and the democratization later in Latin America and other parts of the world. And there were wars, there were refugees. And in 1956, for example, it was still Europe. Hungary in the 60s, it was a lot of work we had in Africa, also in the 70s. We remember probably, okay, you can't remember it, but you know probably from your history books, the situation in the Balkans in the 90s, and later, of course, especially in Middle East and Northern Africa, like, for example, in Syria, now for 10 years. The war was going on for 10 years. It started in early March in 2011, yes, 10 years now. And right now, Syria is the country with the most refugees worldwide. By the way, what is a refugee? You are talking about migration and migrants and also about refugees. But there's a very big distinction between migrants and refugees, and this is very important for us. The big difference is that a migrant has very good reasons to leave his home, otherwise he wouldn't go. But he's doing this more or less voluntarily, and he has a chance to go back. Not so with a refugee. Refugees are people who are forced to flee for political reasons. And if they're not going, then they could be, they risk their health, their freedom, and most likely even their life. These are refugees, and they can't just go back to their home country. And also it's important that a refugee is outside of his home country. This is the definition of a refugee after the Geneva Refugee Convention that will turn 70 in a couple of months, by the way, in June. It was adopted in June 1951. So, but why you have to be outside of your own home country? Because when you are in your own country, then your government has the job to take care of you, to protect you. But as you know, sometimes the government is a refugees in technical sense. They are also so-called internal displaced persons. Actually, people who left their home, their soil, for the very same reasons, but they're in the midst of the conflict, absolutely not better than that of the refugee. If you take a look at the world, there are about 25 million refugees. And there are more than 40 million, about 45, so almost double the number of the refugees. Then you have the IDPs. And altogether, also with other people like stateless people and so on, we have a mandate for. We have a sum of 80.6 million people, 80.6 million people. This is very roughly the population of Germany, of the whole Germany. If you take the 5 countries who are the most refugees are coming in, it is South Sudan, then it is also Sudan, it's Afghanistan, and it is Myanmar, the Rohingya. And if you take the countries who are most of the refugees protected, then take Turkey, for example. There are about 2.6 million refugees. It's an incredible number. Most of them are, of course, from Syria. Germany is also a very important host country, number 4, with 1.4 million refugees. And Germany is also, in another sense, a very important country because Germany is also providing help for UNHCR, providing money. We have a budget of $8 billion. That sounds pretty nice, actually, but we receive, unfortunately, only half of the sum, $4 million. 1.3 million, so a third of the sum, comes from just one state, the United States of America. Thank you very much. Second country is Germany, then comes the EU, and then other Western countries who support the United Nations and UNHCR. And if you're good in mathematics and you think, wait a second, $4 billion sounds like a lot of money, but 80 million people is a lot of people. Yeah. $50 per year per capita. We have, or some shelters received a couple of weeks ago, medicine. And by the way, the education is very important because a lot of refugees are telling me, forget us, we are a lost generation, but our kids, our children, they need an education so that they can get out of here. Well, we would like actually not to give up anybody, especially not a whole generation. But yes, indeed, it is very important that we educate the children, that they have a chance. And let me tell you a little bit something about Kutupalong that was mentioned by the Secretary General. This is the biggest refugee camp in the world. It's Bangladesh. Bangladesh is not really a rich country. It's actually a very, very poor country, but they are hosting more than 1 million refugees. And about 800,000 of them are living in Kutupalong and the surrounding camps. This is one big camp, actually. 800,000. This is more inhabitants than Boston or Las Vegas or Rotterdam or Düsseldorf or Stuttgart, far more, actually. And these are people who are living there in little shelters. None of them is higher than me, none of these shelters. Without electricity, without running water, and of course also without internet, without furniture, actually, if you don't count the sleeping mats they get from UNHCR, maybe a plastic chair or something. And that's the life of the refugee, a typical life of the refugee. Although this is actually not entirely true, because we are very proud that the majority of the refugees are living not in refugee camps, as you know from the news, probably the white tents or something like that. But they are living in villages, in cities, side by side with the neighbors of their host country. But yes, there are many, many refugees and millions of people are living there. And many of them don't really have a very good option for their future. Before I'm turning shortly to Ethiopia, I have to apologize again. Sun is setting here, it's getting darker and darker, but we have still no electricity here. I'm sorry. Let me tell you something about Ethiopia. Ethiopia hosts little more than 800,000 refugees, 800,000. The majority is coming from South Sudan and from Somalia, but there are also 100,000 from Eritrea. They fled Eritrea sometimes a year ago, sometimes 20 years ago. And about the half of these 180,000 lived in the Tigray region. And the Tigray started, some call it conflict, some call it war, 4 months ago, almost on the day 4 months ago, on November 4th, last year. There are 4 refugee camps. The 2 southern refugee camps were cut off from any help for almost 2 months. So there was no food, there was no clinic open and no school. There was no running water, no clean water, because our pumps need fuel and there was no fuel. And that's why the people drank water from the nearby river. And I used that water too for showering, for washing my clothes, but I had the luxury of drinking water from bottles. The refugees had to drink that water. And that's why many of them turned ill with diarrhea and others, especially the children. The other problem is that there were also gangs, violating gangs were looting the camp and steal everything from the refugees, what they had. And you know what? These were the lucky bastards, because it was far worse. Defined armed groups, we don't know where they burned them down, and the refugees had to flee. And still thousands of them are in the surrounding areas, northern Tigray, and they're living under extremely dire conditions. They are still no power. I'm sorry. Can we do it that way? They're living under conditions you can actually imagine, because they're drinking water from puddles and they are eating tree barks and roots because they have nothing else. Wait a second. Why there's no one else? You are United Nations, you are UNHCR, it's your job, it's your mandate to provide for these people. Yes, we would love to, but we still have no access to this area. And although just the Ethiopian government just yesterday announced that we might go. We need to announce where we want to go 3 days earlier. And then we are allowed to go to the refugees and to the internal displaced persons. We really hope we can do that. In the 2 southern camps, they have mentioned the names are Adi Harush and Mayani. There are about 40,000 people now, and we can take care of them. That means it's not a good life, actually, but at least there's enough food, very simple food, very, very simple food, but you can survive. And we hope we can reopen schools soon. For the 2 northern camps, for the area, the situation is still very dire. We can just months, hopefully weeks. We're working on that every day. Let me close with the figure of the day, and this is 86. 86 children were born in the 2 southern camps while they were cut off totally from any help. 86 children were born, of course, without a hospital, and also without a doctor, a nurse, or something else. They were just born in some hut, in some shelter or something, maybe with the help of a neighbor or something like that. 86 children. And they saw the light of the world already as refugees. So please never forget that there are 80.6 million people in the world who have no chance to go back home, who need our support. And that's why I ask you for your support, for your help. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Melzer. Yes, I think we can definitely give you a round of applause virtually for your very compelling talk. We will be taking questions as previously mentioned. Any people who want to ask a question, please raise your hand virtually via the Zoom chat. You can do this by, at the bottom, clicking on participants, and then an extra menu gets put up where you can click on raise hand. Again, anyone wishing to ask questions to Mr. Melzer can raise their hand and we will call on you, at which point you can unmute yourself and directly ask your question to Mr. Melzer. Our first question will be coming from Solomon Ivo.
Thank you for your speech. My question is more of a technical one, so to say. If the number you said, 86 children were born in these places, seeing as they are born as refugees, are many of these children born also stateless, or do they adopt, so to say, or do they have the citizenship that their parents have?
Statelessness is indeed a very limits how many stateless people there are in the world. At least we are talking about millions. We are very grateful that we do not have this problem in Ethiopia, because according to the Ethiopian politics, the refugee children born in the camps acquire automatically the Eritrean citizenship and are recognized prima facie as refugees. We have no idea when these people will go back to Eritrea. So the parents who are obviously Ethiopian refugees and they're taking their children with them, what the Eritrean authorities would say how they see that. But at least here in Ethiopia, they are recognized as Eritrean refugees and so as refugees. And they, Eritrean citizens, and so as refugees. And so at least we do not have this problem. We have a lot of problems, but we're very grateful to the Ethiopian government that they are having this policy.
Thank you.
Our next question will be coming from Zuvan Trivedi.
I just wanted to ask, when and why did you get interested in taking a job at the UN?
It was actually always a dream for me to work for the United Nations. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay, thank you so much. Tere Pevast, distinguished delegate from Estonia. So I was always interested to work for the United Nations, but I worked for a lot of time as a journalist. It was also a great job. I was UN correspondent when I was in New York. Our office was directly in the Secretariat's building in New York. When I finished my job there, the United Nations asked me, and since I always wanted to work for the UN, this was a great opportunity. Yes, I'm missing my job as a journalist, but I love my job for the United Nations, and that's why it was absolutely the right step to do, the right decision to do. I can only recommend that. There are several possibilities to work for the UN in different countries and different jobs, but many of them are really fascinating.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will be coming from Andres Harbord.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted to ask.
I hear you well.
Thank you. I wanted to ask, since you said there is a power outage and you do not have any electricity, how you are able to connect with Wi-Fi or just a local area network. And I was also interested in your current living situation in Ethiopia.
Yeah, this is indeed not really easy. We are sometimes in Addis Ababa, the capital, any European town actually, with a much slower internet. Although there are sometimes also power outage. Outside of Addis Ababa, especially in Tigray and so on, the power outages are very common. In the refugee camps, there are normally a few generators, but the refugees know they just don't have energy. Maybe somewhere, a place where you can charge your phone or something like that. Some of them have chargers with solar cells or something. But normally in a refugee camp, there's no electricity. We are not allowed to stay overnight in the refugee camps itself. We are in so-called guest houses who are very close to the refugee camps, but not in the refugee camps. And the guest houses, they have about an hour of electricity per day. This is the hour when the generator is running. So use your hour wisely to charge all your phones, iPads, flashlights, and so on. Because you have about 23 hours. So the living conditions are, for the UN staff, not very good. So we do not have running water. There's of course no fridge or something like that, or anything you need electricity for. There's no internet. But we're living so much better than the refugees. So we will never forget that. And yes, I confess, I hope I will be corona negative soon, and then I'm going back to Germany, and I will enjoy that I can just drink the water out of the faucet. I can't do it here because it might be a source of diarrhea or something. Where I have electricity definitely, and fast internet and so on. This is a luxury we often taking as granted, and it's not. On the other hand, it is also just good to be here. It makes you richer. Trust me, it makes you richer, and it is an experience everybody should have, actually.
Thank you very much.
We will be having about 2 more questions. The next question will be coming from Aitan Darashova.
Hi, my question is that from your experiences in refugee camps or with refugees, how do you see the future of refugees, I would say?
This is extremely difficult to answer because the situation is so different. The handling of refugees is so different. You are residing right now in Germany, and Germany is giving refugees all possible support you can imagine, actually. Also, if you take a country like Uganda, what is not a rich country, welcomed so many refugees from South Sudan and also from Sudan, telling them, guys, you have almost the same rights like the people of Uganda. You can't vote, okay, but here, take some soil. You were a farmer in South Sudan, you are a farmer in Uganda, and take your chance. This is great. Other countries are, of course, even hostile to refugees, and they do not really have a chance there. Actually, it's not possible to answer your question. I tried with one way. The most important thing for the future is education. And we are meanwhile quite good in giving, unfortunately, primary education. So 7, learning arithmetics, writing, reading, and so on. But when they are 10, so when secondary school starts, then the number of refugee children in school dropped from north of 90% to only about 60%. And when it comes to colleges or even universities, this figure dropped to 1%. Only 1% of the refugee children, adolescent youth, can go to a college or university. This is the big problem. And I really hope there, for example, in Germany, so many initiatives to take refugees to universities. I really hope other countries as well seeing the advantage of educating refugees, turning as a poor part of the society, maybe costing money for the society, turning them into someone who's really is enriching the society where they're living. I mean, take the couple who invented the corona vaccine. I'm not quite sure they were refugees, but at least they came to Germany. They are not born in Germany. And I think it was a very, very good idea of Germany 40 years ago or something to let these people in. And it's in the hand of the host country, not only in the host country. Of course, you need also the initiative, especially the initiative of the refugee. But for a host country, is a good idea just to take this treasure of people and really use them. Yes, use them. If you don't like the word anyway, use these people for your own advantage by educating them.
Thank you.
Our final question will be coming from Ethiopia Reuter.
Thank you so much for your speech. I just wanted to ask if, seeing as you defined migrant as opposed to refugee, and you said that migrants, to a certain extent, they have some sort of volunteer, seeing as they migrate voluntarily to a certain extent, do you think that contributes to xenophobia, or certainly like the mindset that, oh, they could have just chosen to stay in their home country?
Well, as mentioned, when you are leaving your home, you need normally a very good reason. For us who grew up in Europe or Northern America, the good reason is normally, hey, there's a good job with better payment or more interesting or something like that. For people coming from sub-Saharan Africa, the reason is probably I just can't live from the word voluntarily is and in other countries. I'm not sure if this is really supports the idea of xenophobia or something like that, but we still need to say a refugee is a very special person, and there's the Geneva Refugee Convention. So, dear Germany, dear USA, also dear Ethiopia, you can't just say, yeah, from now on, we don't take refugees anymore. No, you have signed the Geneva Refugee Convention. This is one of the most important pieces of paper in the history of international law, of international diplomacy, actually. So, and that's why it's so important to really make clear what is a refugee. It's not someone who tries to use the social net in Western countries or something. And don't forget, 85% of all the refugees are living in the direct neighboring country. They're not coming, all of them, to Europe or something, just a minority. They're living in the next door country because they hope to go back as soon as they can to their home country. And that's why it is so important to make clear which one of these persons is a refugee and he's a person, he's an object of international law, he deserves international protection. This also, by the way, in the German language, they are starting now to call Flüchtling Geflüchteter. Not only now, they've done this for years or something. We don't like that with UNHCR because Flüchtling or refugee or refugee, it's a legal term and it's very important. And if I would be a refugee, I would insist that someone calls me a refugee or a Flüchtling or something like that, because you have also certain rights, very important rights, when you are a refugee, rights after international law. Not to be sent back to your home country is probably the most important of them. If I take a look at Germany, I am from Germany and you guys are right now in Germany. I'm actually kind of proud. There are now and then opinion polls And the Germans are asked, what do you think? Should Germany take in less or more or the same amount of refugees like that? It's normally 30, 40, 30. 30% say, no, definitely less. 40% say, yeah, more. So although Germany is the fourth biggest refugee country in the world, 70, we should accept this. This is actually, if you can be proud of that, I am.
Thank you, Mr. Melzer, for, of course, braving your internet situation in Ethiopia and still being available for giving an overview of the UNHCR's work and the situation that you're facing right now in the Tigray region. I think all of the participants here have learned a lot through your insights, even though the internet situation is and remains as it is. We will be sending a small thank you your way in the next few days, which will be waiting for you once you return to Berlin. So look forward to that. And we just want to give you one last thank you, a virtual round of applause for your great insights. Delegates, please remember to be back in your committees at 18 o'clock.
Actually, I thank you. Thank you for giving me the stage for this. And thank you for also introducing the fate of refugees in your work. Thank you very much. Good luck, dear delegates, dear Secretary General. Bye-bye from Ethiopia. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Chris. Bye.
Bye, thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.
Bye, thanks.
Thank you very much.